Okay, I think we should get started. It's 4:02. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Everybody can hear me okay and see the slideshow? Yes, great. Okay. My name is Richard Just. I run the admissions process at AJI, and I am super excited to be able to share with you a little bit today about AJI, about our admissions process, about the fellowship that we are so proud of and so enthusiastic to be recruiting now our third class for. I'm joined today by three of my colleagues, Katherine, Swartz, Ben Moss, and Calen Razor. They are three of our fellows. There are three of our second year fellows. So they have way more expertise on the fellowship than I do. And I am excited for them to share with you shortly their experiences in the fellowship and also to take your questions from a fellow's perspective about what the fellowship has been like. I'm going to talk for like 10 to 15 minutes, give a brief overview of what AJI is, what the fellowship is. Then I'll turn it over to Katherine, Ben, and Calen. They'll speak each for a few minutes. And then we'll try to reserve the last half hour or so to ask for any questions for either me or for the fellows. One thing I just want to say at the outset is that if you have questions that either you don't get a chance to ask today or for whatever reason you feel more comfortable not asking in a large group, I and my colleagues at AJI are more than happy to schedule individual conversations to answer questions over email, to do whatever we can to make the application process as smooth as possible for you and to make sure all your questions get answered as you're working on the application. So we are AJI, the Allbritton Journalism Institute. Who are we? We are a one-of-a-kind institution in Washington. We're a relatively new organization. This is going to be our third class of fellows, as I mentioned, that we're recruiting for. So we were just founded 2 years ago. And we are a nonprofit that we think has come up with a pretty unique and pretty compelling model for identifying and launching the careers of the next generation of journalists. The model that our founder, Robert Allbritton, created is, we like to call it a teaching hospital for journalism. So what do I mean by that? A teaching hospital, as you all know, is an excellent hospital. It's a hospital where folks come to get excellent medical care. They don't come to the hospital because it's a teaching hospital. They just come because of its reputation for delivering excellent medical care. But the staff of the teaching hospital is made up partly of experienced doctors, veterans who've been in the career for a long time, and early career doctors, residents, folks who are learning the trade of being a doctor. Well, we are the same thing for journalism. We are a publication we have a publication called Notice. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but it's an acronym that stands for News of the United States, like POTUS or SCOTUS or FLOTUS. And that publication is a competitive publication in DC. We are competing with all the best publications in DC. We are breaking news. We are doing journalism that we are really proud of. And many of the readers who read the publication, I would argue probably most of the readers who read the publication are reading it without really knowing the composition of the staff and what makes the staff unique. But what makes our publication different from all the folks we compete against is that our staff is made up partly of veteran reporters and editors, and partly of early career journalists. And they're all working together, not just to produce Notice, not just to produce this great journalism, but also to advance the careers of those early career journalists, our reporting fellows. Our funding comes from Robert Allbritton, whose name I just mentioned. He was the founding owner of Politico. He sold Politico several years ago, and this is his next venture. And after selling Politico, he gave a $20 million grant to set up AJI with the mission of identifying and promoting the careers of a new generation of journalists. The folks who make up that group of veteran reporters and editors, our staff, come from all the best publications that cover DC. Basically, if there's a great publication that covers DC that does great political journalism, chances are very good that there is somebody who is a veteran of one of those places, whether it's the Washington Post, Politico, CNN, Axios, name your place. There's a very good chance that a veteran of one of those places is on our staff of reporters and editors. In addition to that, we have an outstanding group of outside teaching faculty. These are folks who do their primary reporting and writing not for Notice, but for other publications. We are not their full-time job, but they have a relationship with AJI where they come in to teach classes to our fellows and serve as mentors to our fellows. And those folks include, in these, some names you may have heard of: Tim Alberta of The Atlantic, Deneen Brown of The Washington Post, Josh Dawsey of The Wall Street Journal, Cheryl Thompson of NPR, Pulitzer winner Wes Lowry. It's a really terrific group, and a group of folks who are really invested in the careers of our reporting fellows. These are our current reporting fellows. Our first year fellows who just started several months ago, and our second year fellows who have now been in the role for about 18 months. So every fall, we invite 10 aspiring journalists to come to DC for our program. It's an 18-month to 2-year program. We often shorthand it as being a 2-year program, but the formal program lasts 18 months. The last 6 months of the program, fellows are invited to stay at Notice and AJI, but the focus of their fellowship at that point shifts towards helping them to find their next opportunity. We really wanted to build the fellowship in a way that was going to maximize the odds that fellows would come out of it already having landed an excellent job in political journalism. Fellows are paid $60,000 per year. They're eligible for health insurance, other benefits that you would get at a normal job, like paid time off. We think one of the advantages to our fellowship as a way into journalism, as opposed to, say, J School or maybe an unpaid internship at another publication, is that our fellows do not pay us to come to the program as they might at J School, and they are not unpaid as unfortunately is the case at some other publications. Instead, our fellows are paid $60,000, and we hope, and the intention is that this makes the opportunity available to anyone who wants to do it. The program begins every September, and it starts off with a 4-week-long introduction to DC journalism. It's basically a crash course in how to cover DC politics, policy, and the inner workings of government. And those classes are taught both by Notice staff reporters and editors, and by that outside group of teaching faculty that I just mentioned. This is a sample schedule. This actually is the schedule from that very first year of the program. It varies from year to year. And I'm going to go through this quickly, so I'm sure you won't get all the names of the classes here, all the names of the teachers. But the basic takeaway here is that those first 4 weeks are packed, they're intense, and at the end of that time, our goal is for fellows to come out of those 4 weeks really ready to hit the ground running, covering DC. So after those 4 weeks, our fellows basically become full-time reporters for Notice. And at that point, they have beats. They have areas of coverage they're focusing on, in addition to also having the ability to pitch stories outside their areas of coverage. Most of our fellows cover Capitol Hill. That's where the focus of their coverage is. Many of our fellows, their beat is a specific congressional delegation, like a fellow might cover the Michigan congressional delegation or the Texas congressional delegation. There's some variety in what fellows cover, and we try to work with our fellows to create a beat that makes sense for them. But we do have an intense focus on coverage of the Hill, which Katherine, Ben, and Calen can talk a little bit more about what their experience has been on the Hill. But we just think that the Hill is a great training ground for learning how to build a beat, learning how to build sources, learning how to break news in your area of specialty, and then ultimately using all those skills to build the portfolio of clips that are going to be necessary to get attention from the folks who are hiring for journalists at other publications, the places we all want our fellows to go on to work after the fellowship is complete. Fellows mostly write under their own byline. They're mostly doing single byline pieces, but sometimes fellows will collaborate with each other and do a co-byline piece. And sometimes fellows will collaborate and co-byline a piece with one of our veteran reporters. And we think that that is a way, well, first of all, it produces great journalism because you have multiple people contributing reporting to a piece rather than just one person. But it's also a way for our fellows to see how a veteran reporter might approach a story and just learn on the job by collaborating with them and seeing how they approach their work. So this is just a random grab. Many months ago, this was like well before the election when I made this slideshow. I just took a random day on Notice and I grabbed a bunch of headlines from the site that had fellows bylines on them. So hopefully this gives you kind of a sense of the diversity of topics that our fellows are covering. Most of these stories are single byline stories by our fellows. One, I think, is a co-byline story, or one is a co-byline story where two fellows work together on a piece, and one has 3 bylines on it, and that's 2 fellows and one veteran reporter collaborating on that piece. This visual is just meant to give a little bit of a sense of what our fellows' day-to-day lives are like on the Hill. I think the takeaway here is that you see our fellows interviewing, asking questions of really prominent people. We've got Katherine there talking to AOC. We've got Hakeem Jeffries, one of our fellows asking a question of Mitch McConnell, John Thune. So our fellows are in the mix every day with the best reporters in the country, covering the Hill, asking questions of the people who make the decisions that determine the country's future, and producing great journalism as a result of all the reporting that they are doing. So after the fellowship, our goal, and we are going to measure our success as a program based on this, our goal is for our fellows to end the program ready to take on amazing jobs at really excellent publications. We want to be looked at as an institute, as a publication, as a training ground, as a place that other publications say, I want to hire someone from AJI, from this fellowship program, because I know their track record of just helping to identify and helping to launch the careers of fantastic journalists. We are only 2 years now, or not even 2 years now into this fellowship. So our first class has not graduated yet. So I am very confident that 1 year from now, when I'm giving this presentation, I'm going to be able to say our first class of fellows have landed at the following amazing places. I can't say that yet, but what I can say is that the 3 folks you're going to hear from today, as well as all of the fellows in that first class, have put together a really impressive track record of doing all the things that you need to do to get noted, to get attention from from folks hiring at other publications, and to lay the groundwork to have a really successful next step in your career in journalism. They've got impressive clips. They've garnered the attention of editors who are looking at our class of fellows and looking at us as a potential source of talent. So we are very, very confident that as that first group of fellows hits the job market in the coming months, they're going to go on to some places that they and we are going to be really proud of. And while I can't tell you exactly what those places are going to be yet, I can convey a lot of confidence that we're doing everything we can to set our fellows up, and they are doing everything they can to set themselves up for a lot of success in the post-fellowship job market. So who is eligible for our fellowship? We are looking for applicants of all backgrounds who want to work in journalism, who have a keen interest in policy and politics. And this last part is important, who think that journalism can and should play a critical role in our democracy. AJI is, at its fundamental level, a bit of an idealistic venture. And this can sound corny, it can sound like kind of cheesy when you talk about it. We believe in what we're doing here because we want to make the world a better place. But there is a core of that in our mission, in what we're doing. We think that by offering this opportunity and creating this institute to an amazing group of early career journalists, that we can make the DC Press Corps better. We can make the next generation of the DC Press Corps better than it's ever been. And we think that doing so will have an important and positive impact on our democracy. So we're looking for fellows that share that sense of idealism, that are going to journalism for the right reasons, that want to go into journalism because at some fundamental level, they think that journalism will make democracy better and journalism will make the world a better place. We are definitely looking for folks who are interested in policy and politics. I would not want anyone to apply to this fellowship if the idea of spending the next 18 months to 2 years writing intensely about politics does not appeal to you. That is the lane that we are in as a publication. It's the lane we are in as an institute. But that said, our fellows came to our fellowship with a wide variety of backgrounds in politics. Some came in already really loving politics. Some came in with great journalistic backgrounds, but not necessarily thinking of themselves as being people who were super up on the day-to-day of politics. So we're looking for fellows who believe in journalism, who want to do political journalism for the next 2 years, but we're not necessarily saying coming in, we need fellows to have, a complete background already ready to go on the political situation in the country. We're looking for a variety of, we're looking for a spectrum in terms of interest in politics, pre-existing interest in politics. As long as fellows are interested in spending the next 2 years focusing on politics, then we want you to be applying for the fellowship. And in a similar way, we're looking for a variety of levels of experience in journalism. We have fellows coming into the fellowship who were editors of their college paper and majored in journalism and have done internships every summer in college. And we have fellows who didn't do that, but who are able to show us in their application that they have talent and they have passion for journalism and are able to convey that even if they don't necessarily have those bullet points yet on their resume. So we don't want anyone to be dissuaded from applying to this fellowship based on how much traditional journalism experience you've already had. If you have that experience, great, let us know. And if you don't, that's okay too. Show us in other ways in your application that you have the talent and the passion for journalism to succeed in this fellowship and to succeed beyond this fellowship in a journalistic career. I also want to point out that we define the fellowship as being for early career journalists, and that phrase is intentionally vague. Our current group of fellows runs along the gamut from folks who have just graduated from college months before they start this fellowship, and this fellowship is really their first job out of college. And we have folks who've been out in the world for a long time. One of our fellows was in the US military for 7 years before coming to this fellowship. So we're looking for folks who are early in their journalism career, but we're not necessarily looking for folks who are early in their career. We're looking for a range of experiences, life backgrounds, and we think that those can be found both in people who are just at the outset of their professional lives and folks who have gone in a different direction with their professional lives and are now pivoting to journalism. Okay, already covered this. And now I'll just quickly say how to apply. Because you found your way here, chances are you already know where our application is, but I'll just reiterate it. Our application can be found at AJI. And it's a pretty standard application for a program like this. It includes several short essays. It should really take no more than a few hours, maybe at most like a day or an afternoon or an evening. We ask for a reference, but we don't ask for a letter of recommendation. So we want the name of somebody we can talk to if you make it to the final rounds of our application process, but we don't need you to go out and get a letter of recommendation from anybody. The application is due on February 19th. We specify by 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, and we do that because historically, the last few years, many applications have come in right at the last minute. That's completely fine. We have applications that have already started to come in, so you're welcome to apply now. You're welcome to apply at 11:58 Eastern on February 19th. Either way is fine. We won't start reading the applications till February 20th, so apply when you're ready. And yeah, there's the website again. This is my email address, which you all have because I emailed you the link for this meeting, but I want to emphasize again, and I will do it one more time when we get to the conclusion of the hour, that I really do welcome emails about emailed questions about any aspect of the application process, and I'm very happy to talk to anybody about any aspect of AJI. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Katherine.
Great. Thanks so much, Richard. I am so happy to be joining you guys today. It feels like truly so short ago that I was talking to the last class of prospective fellows and doing this, and now we have another group of 10 that are up and running and working as full-time reporters on the Hill, which is super exciting to think that some of you guys could also be in the mix here really soon. This dark room that I'm joining you by the way, I'm on the house right now in the press gallery in one of our booths. So this is why it looks like a dark room. I'm not being kidnapped, just doing my job. But, you know, I'm really so happy to be joining you just because AJI has been such a great experience for me from the beginning. So I'm in the inaugural class of fellows. So we joined as a group in September of 2023. So over a year ago now. And when we joined, that was before Notice had a name, definitely before we had a website, before we had office furniture. It was a really exciting time to get in on the ground level, and we've grown truly so much, both in terms of the fellowship program, but also the rest of our staff. We have a number of full-time reporters, a number of support staff in addition. So that's the thing I really emphasize to people is that it's such a unique opportunity because you have some educational fellowships that are training new journalists, and then you have working newsrooms. And it's so rare to have something that combines the two of those the way that AJI does. So just to talk a little bit more about the fellowship experience, as Richard touched on, that first month will be kind of a boot camp time of classes. And that was just so great to really jump into the essentials of reporting, and not just any reporting, but kind of the nuances of being a reporter in Washington. I had been in DC, I'll say, for a little bit before. I moved to DC from California, where I'm from, in June of 2022, right after college. And I'd had a couple internships and had a real interest in politics. But what had drawn me to AGI is that the work I had been doing, as an intern for different publications, it was a lot of breaking news. It was a lot of responding to the news. I would tell my editors all the time, let me go on the hill, let me go on the hill. And even then, when I was on the hill, it really was just kind of chasing reaction. And I didn't feel like I was getting scoops or that I was breaking news. I was just following the news. So that was something that I really wanted to change. I wanted to deepen my skills as a reporter. And with, the work of the instruction in the classroom, with the mentors that we have, and then as well just with the top-notch editors that we have that you'll work under and the top-notch reporters that you'll work beside. It's really been such a transformative experience for my reporting. So sad to say that, I mean, we're not at the 18-month mark yet. This first fellowship class, our 18-month mark is coming in just a couple months. So it's weird looking at kind of the end of this experience. But it really truly has been so transformative from the education side. And then just to touch a little bit more on the reporting side of things, to talk more about my experience in the congressional kind of state delegation model that we have going. So my state has been Pennsylvania. And for me in particular, that was a great state, getting that assignment about a year before the presidential election. So I have a deep interest in campaign reporting, both, House races, Senate races, up to presidential. And I got to spend a lot of time really leaning into that because of my state delegation. So I have lots of sources back in Pennsylvania, lots of operatives that were working out of the state for Trump and, the Biden and then Harris campaigns that I got to um, you know, talk with them and talk with those sources separate from just the congressional coverage. And I got, the opportunity. They're very generous too. If you have an idea, any story that, is worthy of being reported and worthy of being written, and if you have a good idea, they want to make it happen. They want to make it work. So I think I went to Pennsylvania, I think 10 times, maybe 12 over the last year, doing different reporting on the ground in the lead up to the presidential election and then after. And now, since the election, I've pivoted back more into congressional coverage. So now my days, every day I'm up here in the House, covering the House. And truly, what I can say is that this is the best beat to have in this time, in this administration. Everything is happening in Congress. So you have this classroom time. That's what I love is that with the fellowship, it's really a gradual approach and they don't just throw you into the deep end, and you do keep having classes after that boot camp time, just a little bit more infrequently, once or twice a week. But then, once that boot camp is over, you really get to hit the ground running here. And I feel like the only way to be a great congressional reporter is to truly learn by doing. So you have a lot of support from your editors and from your colleagues. So I guess that's just kind of my opening spiel.
All right, Calen, want to go for it?
Hi guys, my name's Calen. I was informed that I am having some audio problems, so if you guys can't hear me or something, let me know in the chat and we can probably just stop or
Actually, pretty good, Calen.
okay, cool. So yeah, my name's Calen Razor. I am one of the senior fellows in the fellowship. I am from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I went to school at NYU, and this was my first real job post college. My beat at Notice has been for the first year, sort of like others have mentioned, state coverage. So I started covering in North Carolina, and sort of veered out as the Harris campaign was building up to focus on that as well. I have a few things to say. I guess I'll start with some of my favorite things about Notice. And some of this will be sort of rehashing what Katherine and Ben said already, but I think like a big thing is that unlike other programs like journalism fellowships or internships that you guys are probably familiar with, you at Notice you come in and you literally are getting to work. Yes, there is the boot camp that they were mentioning where you're learning the ins and outs before you're immediately doing the work. But sort of like by a month in, you are pitching and you're building clips and you're building a resume and you're writing the stories that are going to sort of get you out there. And you'll have uncomfortable and sort of foreign experiences at first being on the Hill, like maybe stopping a lawmaker or like jumping into a scrum to get your questions out. But it's sort of like the useful learning parts of the fellowship. And through all that, like you won't be alone. There are a bunch of Notice staff that run around the Hill who can help you pretty much in and out every day. Notice is a publication that really wants to talk about people in power, their motives, and things that can seem pretty hard to get access to at first, especially as an early career journalist. But you will have at Notice really good access and be in places where you need to be. So just to give some examples, ideas of things that I got to do where I was like in a good position to really get good stories out. I got the chance to travel a bit around during the campaign season to cover some of Kamala Harris's rallies. Notice was able to get a couple seats at this year's Democratic National Convention and also the Republican one. I attended the DNC, and Ben, who we just heard from, attended the RNC. On election day, we had fellows at several different parts of the country getting on the ground stories. I was stationed at Howard University on election day, which is Kamala Harris's alma mater, and where she was sort of set to give a final election day speech. She didn't actually end up giving it, but we got some really good stories there from lawmakers and other known people in the party who were there, sort of really watching the election results in real time as they came in. So we got some interesting stories about how that sort of loss settled in for them. I will say another thing is that you'll learn that being an early career journalist is a strength and not really like something that's going to tremendously hold you back. I came into the fellowship having to, in my opinion, face a bit of a learning curve. I wasn't terribly interested in the ins and outs of politics and how things worked in DC. I sort of had a learning curve to get over how Congress works, how to break news in a very crowded DC field. And that can obviously be overwhelming at first too, but I think you find that like when you're doing interviews or when you're trying to learn information about something, your perspective being new to DC or being new to a topic helps you ask the sort of basic questions that give you a good foundation for what the importance of a story is. And the last thing I'll say is just to like vouch for the AJI and Notice leadership, who I feel like has really started to turn the gears for us senior fellows on figuring out our next steps after Notice. We've been getting introduced to hiring and talent managers, and at other publications, we had the chance to like refine our resumes and learn how to talk about what we've accomplished at Notice. And we're already doing sort of like mock interviews. So you get the sense that like you're not just in the fellowship and towards the end you're like you're out of there. Like there is a effort to make sure that your next steps are what they need to be. So yeah, I guess I'll stop there.
Great. All right. Well, we would love to take questions. I'm happy to answer questions, and I know that Calen, Ben, and Katherine are happy to answer questions as well.